on the stat line, Paul, it's going to look like Spencer Rattler had a good day. He did not have a good day. He threw the ball up for grabs multiple times, multiple interceptions, would have had a third interception that hadn't been overturned. The defense, really, to be honest with you, was not dialed in until about the middle of the second quarter, and it looked like at that time Oklahoma was going to run away with it. Well, the next thing you know, we get into the third quarter coming out of halftime, and this Tulane team just won't go away, and their defense keeps getting stopped. And I'll say this, and people are going to say, Luge, you're nuts. Michael Pratt, the quarterback at Tulane, outplayed Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma, and he is tough as nails, and you got to respect that kid because he got beat up the entire day.
So what does this say, if it says very much at all, about Oklahoma the rest of the way?
Well, I try as best as I think we all try not to have too drastic of a knee-jerk reaction off of week one. But I think that what we did see a little bit of is Oklahoma spending some time this offseason reading their press clippings. People finally talking positively about them defensively. That hasn't happened in years. We already know what they are on offense. I think they got to refocus. I think their kids, this will be a tough week in Norman for that team. Practice is not going to be fun. And I think they need to be brought down to reality a little bit. The players are there, both offensively and defensively. It's the deepest front seven and front four that Oklahoma's maybe had going back 20 years. Really, and I mean that sincerely. They just got to get refocused. There's not going to be a team. Texas will be close, but I don't think there'll be a team in the Big 12 that can compete with them athletically. But as we've seen in years past in the Big 12, Oklahoma's not immune to it. Iowa State's not immune to it. Texas certainly isn't immune to it. If you don't play your best every week, you could get beat by somebody that's not as good as you.
Tom, big picture, I mean, we saw some utterly bizarre results. I know we usually see one or two of them first weekend of the season, but they were all over the place. Is there some explanation for, what happened to Washington and I know everyone's isolated, or Duke or Georgia Tech or even Vanderbilt losing to East Tennessee State?
Yeah, it's just crazy. I think so much of it just has to do with the maturity of your football team, the team that can block out clutter, the team that can focus on themselves and on what they're doing and not what everybody's saying about them or even what the opponent's doing. We've had a lot of distractions over the last 15 months. I think there was a lot of first-week jitters, a lot of first-week sloppiness, and a lot of coaching staffs that felt like they didn't get their team ready to play. I mean, you mentioned Washington. Oh, that's just one Pac. I mean, the Pac-12's in big trouble. I mean, Wazoo gets beat by Utah State, Washington by Montana, Arizona by BYU. I mean, Stanford gets hammered by Kansas State. Oregon barely survives. And obviously UCLA and SC looked good on Saturday, so that's a positive. But we saw this all across the country, and I feel like we continue to see these types of things year in and year out, and then you get from week 1 to week 2, and all of a sudden the procedure penalties start to go away, the kicking game cleaned up. And I always go back to 2014, Paul. I can remember vividly because I had it in week 2. Week 1, Virginia Tech goes up into the horseshoe and thrashes Ohio State. The very next week, I've got Virginia Tech versus East Carolina in Blacksburg, and Virginia Tech loses. Fast forward to the rest of the season, and Ohio State's the national champion.
One or two quick things before you go, Tom. And I realize on a day like Saturday, you're going from point A to point B, and you don't consume everything like us schmoes, sitting in front of our television with a big tub of popcorn. But what about LSU? That's a team a lot of people thought was going to be a contender this year. Maybe they'll find a way. But and other than UCLA having a better team, that doesn't make up for some of the mistakes that LSU made.
Well, that's the problem. UCLA's got the better team, even though LSU has the better players overall, and that's coaching. And at the end of the day, this is on Ed Orgeron and his staff to prepare his football team to play to the level of their talent. They're not doing that. They came nowhere near close to doing it a year ago. And listen, I was one of those that felt optimistic as well. I had their spring game. You virtually have the entire roster back. They have athletes. They have depth. But that's a team that doesn't play well. They for whatever reason, do not go into the game with the mentality that we are the best team, and, oh, by the way, we're going to play like it. And that's where Chip Kelly and his in-game coaching, I thought, was outstanding. And there was a drastic difference from his sideline to the LSU sideline.
And finally, the big game of the weekend, Clemson and Georgia. It's been analyzed 1,000 different ways, but what was your top of the cake takeaway?
Clemson's offensive line's in serious trouble. And if you actually studied Clemson and you went back to last year and you watched them the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, they were not very good up front. I would say they were below average. And you couple that issue with the fact that you're breaking in a true freshman tailback, you're having to replace Amari Rodgers, replace Travis Etienne, replace Trevor Lawrence. You've got these wide receivers that are coming back to you, but they're not seasoned yet. They may be talented. And in my opinion, and again, not to make a knee-jerk reaction, but I'm going back a little ways. I'm going back to high school here with DJ. DJ's not the same innately accurate passer that either Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson was. That's plain and simple. So you add problems up front to a guy that's not innately accurate, then you're going to have some problems. And defensively might be able to carry him, but until they get that offensive line fixed, you're going to continue to see some struggles out of the Clemson offense.
And finally, Tom, as somebody who was well on to Bryce Young before the rest of us, can he get any better?
Well, he better, because we want to see growth. We want to see him develop. And here's the thing with that. And I've asked a lot, because obviously Georgia was the talk of the weekend, Alabama was the talk of the weekend, and you say, okay, well, what's the difference? The difference is Alabama has a quarterback. If you watched him the other day, all of the plays that he made outside of the pocket that were created with a second passing chance where he bought the time, he escaped and made the play, Georgia can't do that at quarterback. That's the difference between those two.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.